We brought you here, boy, 'cause we want you to know we booked you a berth in the water below with the diesel and shale, diesel and shale. We booked you a berth with the diesel and shale.
I'm Pauline Dakin. Welcome to Maritime Magazine. In 1973, the Canadian submarine HMCS Okanagan came within inches of catastrophe. A British tanker ran over it, tearing into the conning tower, tossing the submarine sideways and back while the entire crew was inside. 40 years later, a group of those submariners from the Okanagan got together to remember the past and to talk about the future of the service they love so much. A service that has been overshadowed by controversy in the last few years. Stephen Puttycombe joined them, and he joins me in studio. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
So, why were you invited to what would seem to be kind of a private gathering?
Well, all the guys were originally stationed here in Halifax during their time on the submarine, and that's why they had their meeting here. There are still a bunch of them that call Halifax home, Buster Brown being one of them. Someone I have known for a long time as I've been covering the modern-day subservice, submarine service. If you call them subs, you'll get the subs are for eating, submarines are for going in the water. Good. So anyways, Buster calls me one day and says, I'd like you to come down and talk to the boys about the past and about the future of the service in Canada. And I can honestly say there are few people in the world who can get me to work on my vacation for nothing. That's exactly what happened with Buster and at this meeting. Buster Brown is about the only person that will do this. And what a great chance to listen to what real submariner experts, real submarine experts have to say.
Okay, well, give us a little bit of background about that incident back in 1973. Probably not many people know about it.
Absolutely true. It happened during training with the British over on the other side of the pond. It was the Cold War. They were training with the British Navy to, among other things, learn to be stealthy, to be quiet, to be able to take pictures and see things without being detected. It was the last day of their training. The crew was tired. They'd been doing it for a while. And here are a few of the submariners, Brian Lapierre, Freddie Rowe, and Buster Brown, talking about that day. They met at the Royal Canadian Naval Association here in Halifax, and there is a bit of background sound because some of these guys haven't seen each other in quite some time.
We always remember where we were and what we were doing.
We could hear it coming. We didn't think she was that close, but then as soon as it started hitting the side, it started leaning over.
And we were at periscope depth, and we're in our last 18 minutes of a 7-week workup. We're coming off the operational phase. We were tired. However, we were overjoyed with the success we really did quite well in the workup. We were quite proud of our accomplishments. Skipper right down. And I suppose the last thing we had to do with this underwater look on a tanker, the RFA Grey Rover, 7,600 ton, and her job was just to pass across us, and we do an underwater look on all her external fittings, including shafting, propellers, ancillary equipment, and so on.
So what's happening here, Pauline, is essentially they're in this training. They have to bring the sub up to a certain point and take pictures of the bottom of this tanker that's supposed to go across them. They went up a little too high. They could hear the sound of the tanker coming, and it tore out the conning tower. You know, that big thing in the middle of the submarine. And the sub went to one side, another foot or so, and they probably wouldn't have made it.
It sounded like a rat eating celery. Back in the days when you used to put a cigarette package on your with a clothespin on your bicycle to make a noise like an engine, something like that, only amplified. It was like an undulating saw going through. And anyway, because we had to go deep, that was the order. Get me down, the skipper said, with a few expletives to make his point. We didn't know the extent of, all this happened within seconds. But as quick as all those things were happening, and shut off for collision would be the pipe throughout the boat, and everybody throughout that submarine had her all isolated in no time flat. It was just that, everybody was worked up, and they knew their jobs well, and the boat was completely isolated to find out within a minute later there was absolutely no seawater ingress anywhere. So now, of course, the order was to get back on the surface. Well, amongst many other things, surface. a red grenade is fired, right, to warn vessels on the surface to get out of the way. I'm coming up. And we probably got up there quicker than the red grenade did. I'd suppose, I can't quite recall, it was probably in the region of about 5 minutes where they finally got the upper lid open. And that's when the sonar came beaming into the control room. Okay, because yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, those timings now, all that happened within, I say, the space of about 5 minutes, from the time we hit, from the time we'd surfaced, from the time they got the upper lid open, and so on. In my position as outside wrecker, all that equipment that got beat up there was all my stuff, so to speak, except for the electrical components and so on, but they were all my periscopes and that. I'll never forget the week previous, we got into Rossi, an anchor, the night before, and I was so pleased. We just come out of refit. I stood on the casing, looked through the fin door. Everything was just so perfect. The paint, the grease, everything was just right. The masks were good. I was so pleased with, the work that the guys had done and all of us together, to get her looking all ship-shape and operational. To find that a week later I stood in that very same spot, and it was just unbelievable. When I see it, when I think about it, is what goes through my mind. I often think about the collision as, let's say, one of the proudest moments I ever had in submarines. One of the proudest. But that was one where it brought a group of guys together big time.
Were we scared? I don't think we were scared until we finally came to the roof and took a look at how close we came to not being scared to being another type of evolution, which we're not even going to go to. I don't think we were even scared until we went back alongside Vaseline, and we weren't scared until we got into the pubs, started to sit back with a beer and make recollection of where were you, what did you do, and all of a sudden, boom. As you said, Reggie, you've never seen so many drunk people come back.
And myself, I was the duty watch, and so we had to be sober, but the rest of the crew, when they came back on board, I never took care of so many drunk that night. So many people were drunk, from the captain to the younger submariner, younger sailors. Everybody got drunk on board except the duty watch. But that day, after, when you look at the fin and you see that, you say, geez, it was close.
And if the captain didn't say negative, and he surfaced,
we would have been sunk.
I think if the captain had said negative, and just said, okay, get me down, flood hose, flood gauge, down every scope, get me down, but no motor movements. If we had had motor movements on the boat, and we were coming up, we were in deep crap.
Gentlemen, I'd like to make a toast to minute 43 on the 28th of July, 1973, 0743. Local. Cheers. Crunch. Okanagan.
Gentlemen, we still have a silent toast, and by that I mean there's
not here.
No refrain. Just have a whack, but don't say anything. To Eddie Diplock, Tug Wug Wilson, Charlie Bullock, Al Goldie Goldsmith, Chaz the Mouth Hinder, good old Charlie, the Reverend Rob Rockley, Bob Mazuick, George Sullivan, Vic Carter, John Hughes, Kenny Robinson, what was his nickname?
Robbie Amy.
Kenny Robinson. Kay Deacon Stewart, and Jack Malloy. Silent toast, gentlemen.
Pauline, that was Brian Lapierre, Freddie Rowe, and Buster Brown. That was Buster doing the toast to his comrades they've lost over the years. It was amazing to be there to watch and listen to the events of that day and the tradition that just seems to ooze out of these guys.
There also seems to be an incredible bond that still exists between these guys.
No, you're absolutely right. Give a listen to them talking about their friendship after another very special toast.
On this auspicious occasion, I've had this bottle of Hussar rum in my bar at home since September of 1976. And I was going to crack it when I retired from the military. I didn't. I was going to crack it when I turned 60, and I didn't. And now that I think this is an auspicious occasion to crack this bottle of Navy rum. And I appreciate everybody being here today. It's good to see old faces. So here, let's issue a tot.
A lot of people would give their right eye to get a hold of something like this, you know. But, no, it's truly something unique that we have, and we're damn proud of it, and we won't give it away. We'll keep going meetings like this, and every year it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, you know.
I think we all tended to downplay it. How close we came to a potential real disaster, I don't think any of us really wanted to admit. And I think we sort of underplayed how bad it could have been. I think the submarine time in general, most of these people are all good, would be good friends for life anyhow. It's a different way of life. It's funny, you go into submarines and you know right away whether you like it or not. And also the people around you, when you first go in there, they can tell you whether they want you around too. Okay, so you end up, it's like a close-knit family in many ways. And the other thing is that there's a philosophy of play hard, work hard, okay? So everyone's got to be a professional on board. You wouldn't, if you didn't trust the people that you work with, you wouldn't be able to go to sleep.
Oh, good God, this is it. These people are salt of the earth. Honestly, you have to be half crazy to be in a submarine to begin with, like, you know. And if you're fully crazy, well, then you really make have a good time. But it takes a lot of time and devotion, and everybody depends on everybody. And that's the whole thing. It's like one big unit, one man ship. Not individuals like it's general service. Oh, I got this, I got that, I do this, I do that. We all work together as one, and it works better. Best. What can I say? We'll see you later on, buddy. Take care, mate.
We sailed in Grey Rover up down on the Clyde, and one early morning a sub did collide. Okanagan struck us and left a great dent. Her conning tower ripped, now served as a vent.
My name is Chris Puxley. I joined the RFA in 1964 as a deck cadet. After 15 years with the RFA, I resigned in 1979, by which time I'd been a chief officer for a couple of years. I then took up employment ashore in the ports industry. These are my memories of the Grey Rover and Okanagan incident, which occurred on the 28th of July 1973. The Grey Rover was a small fleet tanker, one of the first batch of 3 of this class built by Swan Hunter's shipyard at Hebburn on the River Tyne, all commissioned during 1969-70, and which finally amounted to 5 vessels. They had a gross tonnage of approximately 7,500 tons and a loaded displacement of 11,500 tons. They had a length of 461 feet, a beam of 63 feet and a loaded draft of 24 feet. The single controllable pitch propeller shaft with a bridge control was originally powered by 2 Rushton and Hornsby marine diesels, later replaced by 2 Puxley marine diesels, which gave a service speed of around 18 knots. The ship was manned by a complement of 16 RFA officers and 30 ratings. With a beam and a stern refuelling rigs, these ships were capable of replenishing warships underway and at speed with a variety of fuels, including furnace fuel oil, diesel oil, aviation fuel and lubricating oils, as well as being able to give them fresh water. It was equipped with a heavy jackstay rig for transferring a limited amount of dry and refrigerated stores. The ship had a helicopter flight deck over the stern, large enough to accommodate and refuel naval-seeking helicopters. I joined the Grey Rover on the 17th of July 1973, when she was at anchor off the tiny Scottish harbour of Campbelltown, located on the Mull of Kintyre on the northern side of the entrance to the River Clyde. As first officer here in the deck department, I was a senior bridge watchkeeper, keeping the 4 to 8 watch whilst at sea. My duties on board were as the navigator and operations officer, also sharing a bit of flight deck management with the chief officer, a guy called Peter Nelson. The captain was the very experienced Bonshaw Owen, who was shortly to retire. The ship was tasked at this time to Com Clyde, the flag officer responsible for naval activity in and around the Clyde area and the west coast of Scotland. This activity consisted mainly of exercises and trials involving nuclear and conventional submarines of the Royal Navy, operating from their specialised base at Faslane in the Gairloch. Our frequent role was to act as a target ship for their exercises, which included the submarine commanding officers' qualifying courses, known as cockexes or perishers. We would be asked to steam up and down the Firth of Clyde in zigzag patterns or on a straight course, whilst the submarine would manoeuvre and lay in wait, then simulate torpedo attacks. If the sea was calm enough, it was possible to detect the attacking submarine's periscope on radar or even see it visually. If within the rules of the exercise, we were then free to steer towards our threat to try and narrow the target profile or force the submarine to abandon the attack and go deep. Clearly these exercises did not involve the large strategic missile boats, who were not normally expected to attack shipping, but remain hidden at all times. Just 11 days after joining the Grey Rover, I was involved in my only collision at sea, which involved the Canadian conventional submarine Okanagan. She was an Oberon-class diesel-powered boat built at Chatham Dockyard in 1963. On this occasion, she was going through her passing out inspection with Com Clyde staff aboard, prior to returning to Canada and rejoining their fleet. He had been with her the previous day, the 27th of July, carrying out all the high-speed exercises during which we had been her target for several torpedo attacks. Overnight, we had sailed independently around the back of the island of Arran, northwards through the Kilbrannan Sound, around the top of the island and east through the Sound of Bute. In the gathering dawn of the 28th of July, we were moving at a steady 4 knots on a southeasterly course down the Clyde estuary, passing about 4 miles off Arran's Brodick Bay. I had taken over the bridge watch and navigation of the ship at 0400 hours. Visibility was good and the sea was reasonably calm. Somewhere in this area, the Okanagan was supposed to sneak up on us and film our underwater fittings, the rudder, propeller, etc., through her periscope. At about 7:15, and whilst I was still on watch, I spotted a periscope still some way off, coming towards us out of the Brodick Bay area, bearing about 4 to 5 points to starboard. I maintained a steady course and speed as required by the exercise orders, and watched the tip of the periscope pop up every now and again as it got closer. During this approach, Captain Irwin had just come up to the bridge for his morning brief, and I pointed out the periscope to him as it approached from just forward of the starboard beam, and on a steady bearing. It seemed to me, at that time, that the submarine was getting quite close and from an unexpected angle. My assumption had been that it would approach from somewhere astern, diving deeper in good time to take whatever photographs were required. Still the periscope kept coming, closer and from the same steady direction. The captain and I went out onto the starboard bridge wing, and as it neared we could actually see the dark shape of the submarine under the water as it came right up to us. Suddenly there was an almighty thump as the conning tower of the submarine struck our hull under water, almost below where the captain and I were standing. The stern of the Grey Rover was shunted around a few degrees to port and our bow to starboard. It was now about 7:45 hours. On the bridge we were in shock for a few moments with the realisation of what had just happened. The propeller was declutched from the engines and I took a position of our ship. The engineers below in the engine room, who must have had an awful fright, were told what had happened and told to check that we had not been holed. A couple of 100 yards away the Okanagan suddenly surfaced and we could see that she had damaged to a large piece of her conning tower. She obviously had also considerable damage to her periscopes and other sensors in that area. We were quickly able to communicate with her on UHF radio, by which we were informed that her pressure hull was intact and undamaged, and that she was not in any immediate danger. We also were bruised but intact. Fortunately for us, the submarine's conning tower was made of glass fibre or a similar material which took the brunt of the impact. Had it been constructed of a more robust material, it would have been a very different story for us on the ship. Once our mutual safety was confirmed, we both made our way back to Faslane Naval Base, where there followed a board of inquiry. At the end of this thorough investigation, the Grey Rover and her bridge team were absolved completely from any responsibility for the collision. A couple of days later, we were ordered to take the Grey Rover to dry dock at Govan. Once we were in the dock and the dock had been emptied, we could see a massive indentation, although no puncture, to the shell plating of the hull on the starboard side, located vertically below No. 1 lifeboat, along with surface scouring leading aft towards the propeller and rudder. One of the blades of the controllable pitch propeller had been seriously damaged and had to be replaced. After a week or so, this damage had been repaired and we returned to Faslane again, where the Okanagan was still looking rather a sorry sight. We invited the officers across to our wardroom for a few drinks and a meal. It was then that they presented us with a piece of their black conning tower decorated with a red Canadian maple leaf for the Grey Rover to keep as a memento of this unfortunate event. Our duties soon returned to normal and we were tasked to a variety of exercises involving other submarines and naval warships in the Clyde and the outer areas north of Northern Ireland. The Okanagan incident, however, will long be remembered by those who were involved, including myself.
I'm Pauline Dakin for Christina Harnett and me. Thank you for listening and have a great week.
A blast on the klaxon, ring on the gong, and then you go down where no mortal belongs. Where the air's going bad, the bread's going stale, they mix you a nightcap of diesel and shale. Diesel and shale, diesel and shale, they mix you a nightcap of diesel and shale.